Welcome to No Nonsense Psychiatry, the podcast that cuts through the noise and the confusion surrounding mental health. My name is Mark and I'm your host, and my goal is to give you the clear, practical information you need to understand your own well-being. No jargon, no fluff, just honest, helpful tools to help you on your journey. Let's dive in.
No nonsense.
The podcast is dedicated to simplifying the complex world of your mind. I am your host, Mark, and we've all been there, right? Replaying a conversation for the 10th time, stuck in a spiral of rumination about the past, or paralysed by worry about the future that hasn't even happened yet. That constant, exhausting loop of unproductive analysis, and that's overthinking. In this episode 82, Overthinking, we're digging into the behaviour that is fundamentally categorised by excessive and unproductive analysis. We'll break down the two main components, past focused rumination and future focused worry, and why this habit is just so detrimental to you. It paralyses action, it wastes mental energy and amplifies anxiety. To truly understand its destructive power, we'll explore real-world examples of the analysis paralysis. From the philosophical fable of Buridan's ass to the modern corporate failure of BlackBerry's hesitation, showing how the fear of making a wrong decision is often worse than making an imperfect one. But the good news is, overthinking is a habit that can be interrupted, and by the end of this episode you'll be equipped with 3 powerful practical strategies, including the 10-minute rule and WCS, worst case scenario. This metric to break free from the loop and move towards intentional action. Are you ready to gain back control of your decision-making mind? Let's get started. Overthinking is a common behavioural pattern characterised by excessive and unproductive rumination or worry about past event, present situation or future possibility. It's essentially getting stuck in a loop of analysis that prevents you from taking action or making a decision. So key characteristics of overthinking is overthinking often manifests in 2 primary ways. We have rumination, and that is the focus on the past or what's happening now in the present, and this dwelling on negativity on things that will have already happened to, or meaning of the current situations. So examples really of this is the constant replaying of past conversations, analysing every word you said, worrying about a mistake you made, or trying to find the hidden negative meaning in somebody's tone or email. The worry, the focus on the future, and this involves imagining the worst case scenarios and excessively preparing for potential future problems. And examples of this is creating long-term mental lists of things that could go wrong, predicting failure, imagining confrontations, or planning out conversations repeatedly. And why is overthinking detrimental? Because while deep reflection can be quite productive, don't get me wrong, overthinking is the opposite, and it's just damaging because it leads to analysis paralysis, making it impossible to choose a course of action. It consumes cognitive resources, and that could be used for some solving the problem or focusing on productive tasks that you already have. It often amplifies negative emotions, and this contributes to stress, anxiety disorders and depression. And it can cause you to inflate the importance of minor details or misinterpreting events, really distorting reality. And then people who often think or often feel driven by the need for certainty and desire to predict every outcome, eliminate all risks before acting, or control the belief that if they analyse the situation enough, they can control the outcome perfectly. Ironically, overthinking usually results in less certainty and less control, and there are several compelling real-world and historical examples of overthinking, often referred to as the analysis paralysis of the paradox of choice. And these examples clearly illustrate how The fear of making the wrong decision can lead to inaction or failure to adapt. So the philosophical fable, Buridan's Ass, and while not true, it's an historical event. This thought experiment is quintessential example of overthinking leading to paralysis, and this is dating back to the 14th century. And the scenario is that a donkey, or ass, is placed exactly halfway between two identical, equally desirable bales of hay. The overthinking, the donkey, being perfectly rational, cannot find a logical reason to choose one over the other, as any choice would be arbitrary to the break of symmetry. So it learns this, it starts to enter this loop of indecision, and the conclusion is the donkey at the end of the day starves to death because it's unable to make a simple random choice, illustrating that in the absence of a perfect solution, no action is often the worst action. The consumer study, the jam experiment, and this is a famous social experiment demonstrating how an abundance of options can lead to overthinking and decreased sales. And the scenario is that researchers set up two different tasting booths at the supermarket, and one offered a wide range of 24 different jams, and the other offered a limited selection of only 6 jams. The overthinking, the customers, were visually attracted to this larger display, but when it came time to choose, the immense number of options overwhelmed their cognitive resources, leading to decision fatigue. And that concluded that while the large display attracted more attention, customers were 10 times less likely to purchase jam when they were presented with only 6 varieties instead of 24. So they're more likely to purchase the jam, of 6 varieties rather than 24. Anyway, too many choices trigger overthinking and increase the fear of regret, leading to inaction, not buying anything. And then there's the corporate failure. BlackBerry's hesitation. Blackberries, do you remember those? They're a great mobile phone, but little tiny keypads on. Anyway, and this is a modern corporate example of overthinking, a strategic move out of fear of making a mistake or alienating an existing customer base that they had. So BlackBerry, once the dominant smartphone, may I say, faced the rapid rise of Apple iPhone. Of course, it was coming up the wings, wasn't it? And the shift to a fully touchscreen technology on the iPhone. So the overthinking, the company and its leadership were overcautious, spending too much time analysing the risks of abandoning their physical keyboard, like I mentioned before, and their core business model. They were paralysed by fear of making the worst single decision that might upset their loyal business users already. And the conclusion was that the delay in response to the market shift allowed all the competitors like Apple and Google to solidify their dominance. And the conclusion is, in a rapidly changing environment, procrastinating a necessary change can be more fatal than making a slightly imperfect move. And the root cause analysis of these patterns is often anxiety and fear of failure, which is the compounded item, and it is caused by information overload. Overthinking is a powerful habit, but it can be interrupted. And here are 3 effective ways, practical strategies to stop that cycle of overthinking, focusing on action, limitation, and perspective. The first being the 10-minute rule action threshold. And this strategy directly tackles analysis paralysis by imposing a strict time limit on rumination and forcing a commitment to action. So the strategy is, when you catch yourself stuck in this overthinking loop, i.e. trying to decide on an email, worrying about a comment, give yourself a maximum of 10 minutes to think, analyse or worry, and set a timer. And the commitment is that when that timer goes off, you must immediately make 1 or 2 choices. Decide and do. Make the best choice you can right now and take the first step. Okay? Daily distraction, or delaying that and distracting is constantly deciding to turn the tables on the issue for a specific later time. I.e., I will think about this for 10 minutes tomorrow at 4 p.m. and immediately use a healthy distraction technique like a mental alphabet game to fully focus your focus, basically to fully shift your focus or fully focus on your focus. The goal is to teach your brain that rumination has an end point and that imperfect action is better than perfect inaction. Externalize and categorize your thoughts. Overthinking feels overwhelming because thoughts are chaotic and abstract and they're in your head. Getting them out immediately reduces their power. So the strategy is to keep a notebook or a notes app dedicated solely to this task. So when your overthinking starts, stop everything and write every thought you're having. Don't filter any. The next step is that once the thoughts are externalized, categorize them into 2 columns. Actionable, things that I can solve or change right now. Uncontrollable, the past, things I can't change, i.e. the past mistake, someone else's opinion, future outcomes. And the focus is to trash the uncomfortable past list, mentally or literally, or take one single small step of the actionable list and do that. And this moves you from the abstract worry to the concrete problem solving. Apply what is the worst that could happen, the WCS metric. And this strategy is used to counter anxiety-driven future worrying by focusing you on the logical So it worries future worrying by forcing you to logically assess the true severity of your fears. And this strategy is when you start spiraling into the worst case scenarios, WCS, sit down and write out 3-column table. Column 1, my fear, my worry. Column 2, the actual worst case scenario. Column 3, how would I cope? So then an example for column 1 is, I send this email and look foolish. The column 2, the worst case scenario, is the recipient laughs, criticises my work and tells their boss my failure is public. And column 3, how would I cope? I apologise, I learn from my mistake, I ask for clarification and survive, and it doesn't define my whole career. The goal, most overthinking scenarios are not catastrophic. By writing out the WCS, and more importantly writing out your coping plan, you reduce that fear element and you realise that you have resilience to handle the actual worst outcome, making the current worry unnecessary. Okay, so that's it for this time of episode 82 on overthinking. And we've shown you that overthinking is not just deep thought, it's unproductive rumination and worry driven by fear or regret or the need for a perfect certainty. And we saw the dangers of analysis paralysis in everything from the philosophical fable to the failure of BlackBerry. And the critical lesson isn't that the solution is to stop thinking, but to start acting. Remember these 3 strategies we discussed. So the 10-minute rule, set a strict time limit on rumination and commit to that decision or delay. Externalize and categorize, get your chaotic thoughts out on paper and focus only on the actionable items. The WCS metric, facing your worst case scenario and realizing your ability to cope is usually far greater than you actually fear. Your biggest enemy isn't the decision itself, it's the delay. So start small, take a 10-minute rule today, and with your next minor decision you face, give it a go. Thank you for tuning in to No Nonsense Psychiatry. If this episode helped you break free from the mental loop, please subscribe, leave a review, follow, share it with a fellow overthinker. Until next time, remember, imperfect action beats perfect inaction.
Before we go, if you found the podcast helpful, please share it with someone who might benefit from it. You can also support the show by subscribing and leaving a review. It only takes a moment, but it makes a big difference in helping us reach more people. Thanks for listening, and I'll catch you in the next episode of No Nonsense Psychiatry.
No nonsense.